The reality of Vietnam set in for me when I stood on the tarmac in Okinawa, Japan, and watched large black body bags being unloaded from the plane that would soon transport me to Vietnam. I knew that these men had been killed in action. And I also knew that some of us probably would be returning that same way. And I'm sad to tell you, way too many did. But when I arrived in Vietnam on a C-130 at a place called Dong Ha, I really thought we had crashed because out in the field, they makeshift airstrips and they lay down big sheets of metal. But anyway, I thought we'd crashed, which we didn't. And after we'd landed, I got off the plane, I stepped out into Vietnam. It was hot, it was humid, did not smell good. And there was a lot of explosions and firing going on out and around. And I thought, what am I doing here? They hustled us off of the planes. It was in the middle of the night, and put us in an underground bunker where we'd be safe, I guess. But we could hear the sounds of bombing and gunfires all night, and didn't make us feel real safe. But finally, the morning came, and it was time for me to get assigned. I had already been assigned to 3rd Marine Division, but I did not know what company or battalion that I would be assigned to. And so I was inquiring of the seasoned Marines that were there. You could tell they were seasoned because they were dirty and grungy. But anyway, a couple of them told me, said, hey, whatever you do, don't join Bravo Company 19. I said, why is that? Well, because they're always in the action, and they've been wiped out 3 times. I thought that was good advice. But what I didn't know was I'd already been assigned, because I was a replacement for one of those that had been killed. And anyway, the next morning we were assigned weapons and all the gear that we needed for the field, and food, sea rations. We were out, we had our assignment, and we were on a search and destroy mission in that area. And along about, I don't know, mid-morning, we come up on an open field. And there's not a whole lot of open fields in Vietnam at that time. But anyway, we were kind of inspecting it, seeing if it's going to be safe. So we finally decided, yeah, we need to get across. Well, right in the middle of this field, we came under a mortar attack. I mean, mortar rounds were falling all around, exploding, throwing shrapnel in the air. And we were no place to go except hug the ground, eat the dirt, because we got as close to the ground as we could get. And this went on, seemed like forever, but it's probably only 5 minutes or so. But when it stopped, we looked around at each other, and not a single Marine had been wounded. That was my first day. My second day, we were still on the same assignment, and we walked into a U-shaped Viet Cong ambush. And there again, no place to go except fight our way through, which we did. We prevailed. We managed to kill all the enemy except for 2 that we captured. But during the battle, one of our Marines was killed and 3 others were critically wounded. About a month later, we were at a place called Con Thien. Con Thien is a strong point in Vietnam, close to the demilitarized zone, the dividing line between North and South Vietnam. And it's a really good location as far as being able to see the points that you need to see, such as the DMZ and other areas. But it was such a good location that the enemy wanted it as well. And so they bombarded that place every day, pretty much every day. And either rockets, mortars, gunfire, and I was privileged to be there 3 different times. I did not enjoy any of the 3. But because, I mean, it was so bad, we had helicopters trying to come in pretty much daily to bring us ammunition and food and to pick up our dead and wounded Marines. Because this is something that happened almost daily. And we just never knew. We had guys joking, is the next bullet got my name on it? The next, you just never knew. And anyway, we were getting an assignment, and it was to go out along the demilitarized zone. And my company was to wipe out any enemy, any positions, anything we could find that belonged to the enemy. So we were preparing to go, what we call saddling up, getting all of our gear on, getting ready. And the commander of Con Thien came over, and he said, I want to talk to you all a minute. I just want to caution you and let you know that there have been 5 battalions of the North Vietnam Army spotted out along the demilitarized zone. But he went on to say, the location you're going, I don't think you'll see any of them. I said, okay. So we headed on out, and I'm thinking, we're 150 Marines. We don't need to run into 5 battalion, which is around 5,000 enemy. And so we went on out, and we were taking care of business. First couple of days, we were destroying bunkers and whatever we could find. And the second night, we were setting up our perimeter and digging in, what we do pretty much daily. We dig holes, that's where we live. And we could hear explosions nearby. And we're thinking, the enemy, maybe they think we're down there. But actually what they were doing was zeroing in on where they thought we were going. Which, as it turned out, they were right. But anyway, we got up that morning. We were all tired, bloodshot eyes, because we really didn't sleep that much. We were on 80% alert. And so we got up, headed out. And along about 9 o'clock in the morning, we walked into an area where it was like, have you ever kicked an ant bed? Ants go everywhere. That's what it was like. The enemy was everywhere. Those 5,000 enemy, we had found them. Well, actually, they had found us. And so we were caught up in this battle, and this went on pretty much all day. Starting at 9 in the morning, and we were calling for support, trying to get help. But our communications was breaking down. It wasn't doing so well. And finally, along in the late afternoon, we started getting some help, some other companies, other battalions coming in. And we got 4 tanks coming in to help us out. And we had called in airstrikes. We had actually called airstrikes in on our position, because that's where the enemy was. And so the planes were coming in, dropping bombs and napalm. And I don't know if you're familiar with napalm. It's really bad stuff. It's a burning gas gel. It's a gelled. And when it gets on you, it does not stop burning. And the other thing is, it pulls the oxygen out of the air. So not only were we in battle, we were having trouble breathing and trying not to get killed by our own people. But like I say, the battle went on pretty much all day, and now we're driving the enemy back, and they were retrieving, and at the end of the day, our 150 Marines had dwindled down to 26, and all 26 of us had been wounded at least once. I had been wounded twice. Once when a grenade went off over my head, filling my ears with little pieces of shrapnel, causing me to be temporarily deaf. A little later, I was helping a wounded Marine that had been shot in the hip, trying to get him to a helicopter to get medevaced. And as I was dragging him along, we came under a mortar attack. And so we just hugged the ground, hugged each other, and I felt this hot, burning pain in my left arm, to the point that I thought my arm was gone. I was so excited to see that it was still there. It did have several pieces of shrapnel in it, which I managed to pick out all, except for 3 small pieces that went deep into my arm. And they're still there. I guess that's my souvenirs from Vietnam. And, at the end of the day, there was just the 26 of us. We were just fighting for each other, fighting for our own lives. We had 59 Marines killed so far, and 65 others critically wounded. So we were the only ones left that were even able to fight. I often wondered what happened to all those medevac Marines. As I was trying to get the Marine that was wounded on the helicopter, they kept grabbing me, trying to get me on the helicopter. I said, "Oh, guys, I'm all right. He's the one that's hurt." And they said, "Well, you look like you're hurt." And I didn't know how bad I looked. I had blood running down my face and my arm, and then helping other guys that had been wounded, and so dirty and messed up. But anyway, I just often wondered what happened to the rest of them that got medevac. And the only 2 that I knew of, there was a couple of guys that returned to our company about 2 months later. One of them was my good buddy, Ronnie Fields, who had saved my life. Of course, we were saving each other all day, it seemed like. But this particular incident, the enemy we had formed a perimeter, a little perimeter. There was about 8 of us. We thought it was going to be our last stand. And we were serious. And anyway, they were walking up. One of them walked up, had his AK-47 pointed at me, and all I had was a .45 pistol at that moment, because I was the gunner on the 60mm mortar. And anyway, I shot him, wounded him, but he kept coming and along with the others. And then my buddy Ronnie was just a little across the trail. At the same time, I yelled at him, and he come bailing out in the aisle, just screaming and shooting his M16. And so there for a few moments, he's firing his M16, I'm firing my .45, the enemy's firing his AK-47, and then it stopped. And the enemy was dead. Ronnie had been shot twice, and I was fine. And another miracle for me. And I never was sure. I thought Ronnie really deserved a medal for putting his own life at risk for a fellow Marine, but he didn't receive any kind of commendations. And there was a lot of that went on because, and I've seen so many heroic things that day. And but the problem was, we didn't have anybody to turn in any kind of awards, because all of our officers and our high-ranking enlisted men had all been killed. So nobody was turning in what needed to be turned in. And whenever we first walked into this area, the first platoon that went into this area was just literally wiped out. The second platoon I was attached to, probably 50% were wiped out. And so we just set up our mortar and started firing mortar rounds, and we just set it at an angle where it wasn't going very far, because that's where the enemy was. And we could feel the dirt and the rocks coming back at us, but we kept it going until we ran out of mortar rounds. And then we were in trouble. We both jumped in a bomb crater. They were firing at us, we were firing at them. Finally, my assistant gunner was named Tom. I said, "Tom, we got to get out of here. We're going to get killed or captured." And so I said, "I'm going, you cover me." So I took off. Tom jumped up, fired off one round, and his rifle jammed. So here I am running with no cover. I was just running a zigzag pattern because the enemy was firing. I could see it, the rounds digging up dirt all around me. And anyway, I reached this little group of guys that we had set up the perimeter, and then we got Tom out as well. And there were just so many things that happened that day that I can't even recall all. It was so fast and furious. And at the end of the day, I guess my worst experience, I don't know why I'm telling. Was when we loaded our dead Marines on these tanks. And then some of us got on and rode out with them and tried to hold them on to keep them falling off because the terrain was so rough. But that was a horrible experience, and it still haunts me. We finally made it back to Con Thien. Those of us that were left, and the ones that we had loaded on the tanks. You know, my tour started in May of 1967 and ended in February of 1968. I came home on a snowy Valentine's Day landing to be greeted by my beautiful wife and our 2.5-month-old twin daughters.
You mentioned the one Marine's M16 jamming.
Uh-huh.
And I know that was a big problem when the
It
M16 came out. Was this something you guys had to deal with a lot?
Yes, it was a big problem. I'll tell you what, during Operation Buffalo, I was constantly looking for a rifle because I had a 45 pistol. They were all jammed. They were just laying everywhere jammed. And of course, the Marines are dead around them. But I never did find one that wasn't jammed.
You know, so when I talked to Marines who were there fairly early and experienced this problem with the jamming, that must have been its own psychological challenge. I mean, you're put into, Con Thien, in the summer of '67. That's one of the really tough fights of the war.
Yeah,
And you've got a weapon you can't rely on.
that's right.
I mean, all by itself, that's got to be.
Yeah, we didn't realize that when we issued. You know, at my boot camp, I trained with an M14.
Right.
And then when I went to initial training, it was an M1. And then when I went to Vietnam, they gave me an M16.
Wow.
I'd never even fired it.
And was it, by the time your tour was over at the beginning of '68, had the jamming problem been resolved, or was it still
Not really. It was just work hard, try to keep them clean, which was almost impossible. Right. And no, they didn't resolve that for quite some time later.
Yeah, that's one of the absurdities, because the reports are coming back to things jamming, and the response is, well, you got to keep it clean.
Yeah,
that might be hard to do.
That's right. It's real hard to do.
It might be hard to do
when you're out there in the dirt, crawling around and jumping in holes, and it's difficult to keep them clean.
What about Navy corpsmen? Do you have any memories of corpsmen when you were there in I Corps?
Oh yeah, our corpsmen were great. I'd hold them highly because they'd run right out in the battle, patch you up, and some of them got shot doing that, but they'd still do it, and they were brave.
Yeah.
And in my recollection, I didn't see any that I wouldn't put my life against. They did a great job. Yeah. And we lost all of our corpsmen that day, on July the 2nd. I think there were 9 corpsmen.
All of them were hit.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I may have told you this before. I have a good friend that I got acquainted with later because he was in Bravo, and he was a corpsman, and he had some kind of a medical issue, and he didn't go out with us. during that time.
Mm.
But his replacement did, and he didn't come back. So he has that, to deal with.
That's survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is when we got back with our dead Marines, he was the one that tagged them. And they wasn't in very good shape, with all the bombing, and they wasn't too good to our Marines whenever they were dead.
When the NBA found the bodies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, that was a hard thing to deal with.